Welcome, everybody.
I'm right here. What can I do for you?
Whoop.
Hey, Chuck, thanks for taking care of that yesterday.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that, he wants to get it done and put that away and start something new. So those
Yeah.
images are put away until the 5th of February now.
Awesome. Awesome. So, welcome, everybody. If you are new to this call and you haven't changed your name so that you include your area and where you are in the process, I would kind of ask that you do that so we know who's kind of here and where you are in the process. We will also open it up to questions. Anybody? Well, first of all, there's some announcements, some things that just came through. If you haven't taken the test and still kind of working on that part of it, Julia Boyd just sent an email or just posted on Facebook that there's new practice test on the PPA website. Instead of it being just 10 questions, it's now 50 questions. So I thought that was kind of exciting. Gives you a little bit more opportunity to kind of, see what the test is like. It's half of the normal test. So it kind of gives you an idea. It'll give you a better idea as far as your timing and some of the questions that are there. So I thought that was kind of exciting. And then for us liaisons that are on the call, we'll probably still speak on Thursday, but they announced our liaison meeting. Will be, I think it was the 25th,
26.
26th for a couple of hours that day. So that's some training, and we get to talk about some of the new things that'll happen this year for liaisons.
One thing on the online test, because I downloaded the one copy of it with the answers, and all of the answers have references to the source document for the question.
Oh, very interesting.
Oh, I'll check that out.
Very interesting. So are they this mostly coming from the book, or are they coming from videos?
Mostly, I just looked at a few of the questions, and London Upton and a couple other references were on there, and it gave, I remember for London Upton, they had the 11th and 12th edition, and it gave the page number for both of them.
Oh, very good. Very good.
So if you want to know where they got the answer from, you can go to the book at the page and find out how they come up with that answer.
Very interesting. Nice. That's a great study tool then.
So where is that sample test located? Just under the CPP resources?
Yeah, I would think so. I didn't get a chance to look it up from the Facebook post, but I would think it's with the other, resources.
Yeah, it's with the other resources where it's got a thing that says sample test. They have an online version, they have a downloadable version, and then they have a downloadable with questions and answers.
Great. Awesome. So we'll open it up. Anybody have any questions that they ran into this week that we can, start to work on and kind of hash out? We have a lot of liaisons, a couple of new declared, so I'll open it up. If not, I can go to my question. So I guess I'll break the ice with my question. So I'm going to screen share, and it is this one. So this week's question, I just posted it this morning. I'm sorry, I was running a little bit late. It says, a histogram shows what in an image? So we can discuss what that might be as far as an answer. What does your histogram on the back of your camera, or even in Photoshop, what is that showing specifically?
A tonal range of your image.
That's
Nobody else
close.
Get some more detail.
Yep.
Well, are you looking in general or just at a specific image, I guess?
Actually, more specific to the question.
Well, if you're looking for the darks and the highlights or the shadows and the brights, or I mean,
All right.
it's a range. I've always viewed it as a range between the dark and the light. That's basically,
Right.
yeah. So
So
which emits.
but yeah, that would be the graph, so to speak. Speak to me more about the specifics of what the histogram. Are there numbers involved? Or I mean, how would you describe that?
Oh well, I mean, if you're looking at, you're telling me your 256 colors between your darks, your midtones, and your brights,
Not colors.
or well, it's your grays, whatever you want to call it. In my mind, I see gray, but in my mouth, I say color.
Well, it's very important that it's not colors.
However, Skip, I will say, and it's not for the test. Each color does have a histogram. You can bring that up on your camera.
Absolutely.
So each RGB has a color. So
But the histogram is representing levels from 0 to 255.
correct. Yep. And we'll go to the answer that is in the. I gotta go back to my share. Stop share. I gotta go back to my screen share. And the answer that is given on the Quizlet card. Whoops. Did I do that? Yep. Okay. Is the brightness value of all pixels in an image illustrated as a graph numbering from 0 to 255. So let's talk about that a little bit more. The 0 range shows you what?
Nothing.
Right. If
Well,
an
zero is
image has,
black. So.
if a part of your image has 0 pixels, why would that be represented? Did I say that right? I didn't sound like it said it right. So if a part of your image has 0 pixels represented, how would that fall on the scale?
Well, zero is black, isn't it? If I recall.
Yep. If you've got no lightness at all in there, that would be represented as black.
Yeah.
So the opposite is true too. If a part of your image has 255 pixels, or I'm sorry, a range of 255 has a lot of light, represented as 255, it's going to be white. In general, if you have a part of your image that reaches 255, that is not going to have a lot of detail, correct?
Right.
So a tonal range is going to, for it to be white or a visible white on a print or on your screen, is going to have to be less than 255. And the same thing is true at the 0 end. It's going to have, if you want detail in a shadow, it can't be 0. It's going to have some representation there at a very low number. How is the middle? Let's talk about the middle of the graph and what we know is an 18% gray, middle gray. How is that represented in the graph? What number would that be represented by?
Divide it in half.
It's about right there, depending on the manufacturer of the middle gray card. The most standardized middle gray card is going to be a Kodak gray card. It's the one that everybody's been using since they started printing, black and white images. 18% gray reflects 18% of the light when you're talking about using a densitometer. But if you look at 18% on a histogram is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of what's 255 divided by 2?
127.
Yeah, 127. So
So how would they word that in a question on the test? I mean, if the questions are all situational, how would you? I mean, I can look at the back of my camera and see if something's too bright, and I know to lower something or up something to make it, to make my exposure better. But how are they going to word a question of your histogram
right.
on the test?
I've seen that question on the test, and it's usually worded something like, if your image has a histogram that shows all of the pixels more towards the right of the histogram. I forget what the ending of the question is. What do you need to do? What's happening in your picture? What do you need to do to bring it, back into range? I forget what the ending of the question is, but usually it starts out, if your image has a tonal range with all of the pixels all the way to the right of the histogram, what is that telling you, essentially?
I think I've seen that question hooked up with, is this a high key picture or a low key
Okay,
picture?
I was just thinking high key in my head, and that's
Yeah, but see, even a high key, you're still wanting detail in your whites. You don't want it all the way pegged to the right of the histogram, right?
No, but it would be skewed to the right. It wouldn't be all the way to the right. So
correct. And same thing with a low key image, it'd be the opposite.
Here's one on the sample test that's kind of similar to I think what he's asking. It says, when reviewing a histogram, how can you tell that the shadows/highlights are clipped?
There you go.
And that will be by a spike on either end of the histogram.
In fact, that's a good question that ends up to be important when you're reviewing your images for technical submission.
Right. When you're looking at a high key, if you have a spike all the way at 255, there's a good chance that you don't have the detail in the highlights like you should. Matter of fact, it's pretty much guaranteed you're not going to have detail in the highlights. Unless you close your eyes and think about what you took a picture.
Or squint? No.
Let me say something. Friend of mine, some of you guys might have known him, Ben Wilmore. He does a lot of teaching on Creative Live. He's great on Photoshop and Lightroom anyway. Way he explains the histograms. Everybody know what a light dimmer is? You remember a long time ago?
Yeah.
Maybe somebody still got it. We got a dimmer on the wall, and as you raise it, the light gets brighter and darker.
Yep.
Ben explains it that there's 256 dimmer switches across the bottom of a histogram. And you raise and lower that dimmer switch to what you want to do with that histogram. And I thought that was a pretty good analogy that he uses. If you think about 256 dimmer switches across the bottom of a histogram.
So
Okay, I've got a question that I'm trying to figure out.
Sure.
The question is, a seriously underexposed image will show the tonal values on the histogram. And the answer is on the far left.
That'll work.
Yes.
But I thought it would be spread evenly throughout the graph because it's severely underexposed. So isn't the white underexposed and the black underexposed?
The way to think of that is the whole graph gets shifted to the left. The whites and the blacks get shifted to the left. So if it's properly exposed, it's more towards evenly across the graph.
Okay.
In other words, Renee, you wouldn't have pixels on the right hand side.
I mean, think about the axis, the horizontal axis on your graph as being all the different possible light levels that could exist, all the way from black to white. Okay, how tall the peak is in each one of those areas just depends on how many pixels you've counted up and stacked up into that particular brightness. So when they talk about severely underexposed pictures, that means you're not going to have very many stacked up in these really bright levels. They're all going to be piling up in the low light levels.
Right.
So think of it like that. Okay.
Yeah, I get what y'all are explaining to me, but I still see that all the way across the board is not going to be where it should be.
Well,
But I guess what they're saying is more pixels are lined up to the left.
Correct, because more of them, you count up more pixels that are dark than you do that are light.
Right. Yeah.
If they're spread evenly across the whole thing, you have an equal number of bright pixels as you do dark pixels.
Yeah,
So
I get it.
that wouldn't lead to an overall underexposed picture.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Skip, I really liked your definition of a dimmer switch because I think of the histogram as degrees of brightness. And I think if you can just kind of get that picture in your mind, I think it paints a better picture. And I think as you're looking at a lot of these questions, paint the picture in your mind. Look at it on the back of your camera. I think it'll really help you. I know it helped me.
Sure. Good questions. Good discussion.
I can actually show a picture, make it underexposed, and you can see how that histogram, the whole thing shifts to the left. Let me go ahead and share my screen real quickly here, if I can.
Yeah, if anybody wants to learn Lightroom or Photoshop, check out Ben Wilmore on Creative Live. He's got some amazing examples that really drives it home.
Okay, now here you can see the histogram. Most of the pixels are in the middle, very few on the left side, not a whole lot on the right. But now if I underexpose this, you see how everything shifts to the left, the shadow side. That's what they're talking about in that picture. I still have some brightness, not much. Over here at the right end, there's nothing. And that's what they're talking about it being over on the left edge.
Right. Show it the other way, Chuck.
Yeah, we can show it the other way.
Go overexposed.
If it's overexposed, then everything goes to the right edge of the histogram. Did that help make it a little clearer?
Well, for me, I understood it. It's just, to me, the question was misleading because I understand, you know, dark is on the left and bright is on the right. But to me, the whole thing changes. When you make the exposure to the right, everything moves, not just the pixels on the right. So to me, I get it, but the question to me made it a little.
Yeah, I mean, the way it's worded. Yeah.
It's weirded too.
Yeah. If it's underexposed, it shows pixels only at the shadow end, which, yeah, you have to kind of figure out where the shadow end is. But as you can see, when I showed that, everything shifted towards the shadow end.
When evaluating a histogram in practical use as well, you have to also consider the tonal range of your subject. Just like we were talking about a high key and a low key image, you know, a high key image is going to have a whole lot of pixels towards that high end, you know, towards the right end of the image. When you're talking about a low key image, you're going to have a whole lot of pixels towards the left end of your histogram. So but for general images that have a neutral tonal range, you're going to fit most of your pixels towards the middle of that histogram. You're not going to have a whole lot going that are going to be pegged towards the high end and not a whole lot towards the low end.
And if you take out all the non-essential words in that question, the way it's written, it's asking you which end of the histogram is shadow, left or right.
Correct.
That's all it's really asking. Which side of the histogram is the shadow side? They just put a bunch of
I'll
pictures
look
of-
at I'll look at the question a little differently next time.
Yeah, I've got it. It is one of the questions in that 50 question sample test.
Good
And
deal.
it gives the reference to where to find out more information.
Good deal. All right. Any other questions we can address? Anybody excited about getting ready to take the test? JR?
I don't know. We'll see what happens. We never know.
There you go.
I just don't want
forget.
to. I just don't want to fail it by 1 point. That's all.
Yeah.
Which would be
We've heard that story before. That's not a pleasant story.
What did we say passing is? 70?
70 is passing.
I mean, yeah, if you're gonna fail it, do it with like a 40. Don't do it with 69.
Go all out.
I was surprised it was that low when I first started investigating it. I thought it'd be like an 80 or something. But
Well, let me just say
70%
this.
is usually considered passing on a lot of things.
yeah.
Well, considering that in education, a D is passing. My
Easy.
children's they're like, it's a D, Mom, it's passing. I'm like,
I mean, I want to pass, but I want to pass with a respectable grade.
Right.
I'm not that. I go shoot for the A and then raise the bar really high.
We'll see you never know. So,
That's why I said I kept taking the practice test and restudying all the information that I missed until I was scoring in the upper 90s on the practice test consistently. Then I went and took the real one.
So has anybody here actually purchased, I can't think of the person's name, but he sells 300 questions for $49. Has anybody actually purchased that book? Or just...
I have not heard of it.
Yeah, it was on the PPA. It's on, I can't think of the guy. He has a class online for like $500.
Is that Steve Kozak? Does
No,
he have a...
No, he has 100.
No, it's a different person.
$99. 79 if you live in Virginia.
He has an online course for the test, but then he has just a practice book for
I think that's Chris Duncan.
Oh, huh.
So I was wondering if anybody ever purchased. I was kind of contemplating it, but I was kind of like, damn, I could buy half a light meter or something.
Only a half?
Which half are you going to buy there, JR?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same.
I don't know what. Yeah, I just in my mind I'm thinking, I could buy something new with that. So that's.
Yep. That's true. That's true.
Maybe just find someone that's been through the process to kind of mentor you through it, because that's what I do with my candidates.
Right.
I don't know $500 bills for that. That's
Yeah, I was when I saw it, I was surprised.
For the price of your PPA membership, it's all there. I mean, everything you need is in there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Good deal. Any questions that, anybody can come up with on the liaison side that we can post? That we can talk through? I should have had 2 ready for today.
Oh.
I'll back up.
I might be able to get onto the Quizlet site real quick.
well, candidates. What questions do you have? What have you been?
I have one more
There we go.
question.
Go for it.
And it's because of the test. And again, I understand the concept. I'm just trying to understand how I can do answer the question better. Which of the following is the best choice for photographing a subject in mixed lighting? Choose the Kelvin setting and set the camera to 5500, or photograph in RAW and correct during image editing. Now, to me, those answers are the same.
They are not.
Mm-mm.
Because you're still going to edit in RAW. Okay, so that's probably where I go wrong, because I'm thinking if I set it in Kelvin at 5500, I'm still going to go in and edit in RAW. But that's not what they're saying. They're just saying set it at 5500 and leave it. Right? And that's what you would use. So I kind of answered my own question. Sorry.
Hey, that's all right. We can
Can
talk
I,
through it a
can
little
I,
bit more.
can I dig in here a little bit?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the one thing that, and I'm going to tell a little bit of a story here. When I first started in photography and I started my own company, everything I did was I did it as fast as I could. Like if I did a photo session, I edited it and I got it to my customer right away. And it got to the point where people would be like, oh my God, you got that so fast to me. That was so great. Well, what happened was over the years is I got busier and busier and busier and busier. I couldn't keep up with myself. And I got to a point one time at Christmas where I had pulled 3 nights of all-nighters in a row because I had promised people by Christmas they would have their photos. And I realized that I couldn't continue. This was not a plan. And so, one of the things we talked about last week was why is this a question? Why is this something that they want certified professional photographers to have a moment that you come to Jesus, thinking about these questions and what are you learning? And the thing about it is this, the answer unequivocally always has to be, you need to get it right in camera. And because whenever you add post-production, you are adding time to your work. And when you add time to your work, whether it's easy to do it in Photoshop or it's not easy to do it, it doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. It's adding time to your workload. And as you get busier and busier, it's going to be unmanageable, the amount of time that you're putting forward. So the answer is, in my humble opinion, always get it right in camera.
That was not an option.
It wasn't?
Nope.
Read the answers back again, Renee.
I thought it was to set your camera, Kelvin in camera at 5,500.
Right, but the question was, there's mixed lighting.
It doesn't matter if there's mixed lighting or not, is you're telling the camera what to do.
What are all the answers?
Hang on just a minute, I'm getting to them.
So I guess
I remember that question, and there is one that's more right than the others, but I don't remember what the answers were.
We've been through this one before.
But if you're shooting in RAW, you're going to have to upload it to your software anyways. And
Now, unless you're shooting RAW plus JPEG.
who does that? I don't.
I do.
It depends on your work.
I like a backup, huh, Sally? You can shoot wrong, but you got a little backup back there.
That's
If I don't have to edit it, I won't.
I do both. I do, if I've got the color balance and everything right in the JPEG, I go with it. I don't need the RAW for it.
I was always under the impression when I started studying for the test in 2019, that it's always your ultimate goal is to get it as close to the right in camera. And that's just what you're supposed to be doing. I didn't know there was other options. That I didn't view Photoshop as an option. I viewed it as I need to do this here, and then that's another separate deal that I need to add in if I need to add it.
If I remember right, one of the answers that was offered there, the answer itself actually got you to what you're saying, to get it right in camera the first time.
That's what I was saying.
Yep.
I do a lot of sports.
The answer was to photograph in RAW and correct during image editing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And where was the question from?
Okay, I found it. Which of the following is the best choice for photographing a subject in mixed lighting? Set the white balance to daylight, photograph in RAW and correct during image editing, choose the Kelvin setting and set the camera to 5,500, set the camera to AWB and let the camera decide the white balance.
In that case, because the question is written so vague, RAW probably would be the best answer, because you don't know what your mixed light sources are.
It seems to assume that you're in JPEG for all the others. White balance is it only states RAW in one of them, which is presumptuous.
Yeah. And like I said, it doesn't give you any more details to what type of mixed lighting. Do you have an incandescent bulb and the fluorescent bulb? Or do you have some candles and on the other side of the room, a small fluorescent bulb or an LED, it is a very vague question as to what that mixed lighting is.
And I guess in a sense, it probably is a good question, because if for some reason, you may not be you may come into unknown lighting for some reason. I don't know what the situation might be, but it's if you get in a bind, what's your go-to, and that
Right.
would be it.
There are a
Ron-
lot
Ron-
of venues that have different color lights, and without a color meter, you're going to be guessing.
Well,
Yeah.
let me tell you what I do, Tom. I do a lot of sports in a lot of venues. First thing I do when I walk into that venue is do a custom white balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I do a custom white balance every time I go into a gymnasium. Even if I've been there last week, I'll do it again.
So
I've
Ron
had two
and I
situ-
run. Whoop, go ahead. Sorry, Jack. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. There's two venues that I've shot in my career that I actually had to go raw and auto white balance and still didn't like it. One is at Pensacola Naval Air Station. They have a set of hangars, and the lights in there have an orange glow to them. And when you walk into them, they actually almost make you dizzy. They're that odd. And in that one, that's one of those.
Whoop, we lost you there, Jack.
Oh,
we lost your
am I
audio.
back?
There you're back.
Okay. I moved my mouse. It must interfere with it. And the other one, there's an indoor arena up near Fort Worth that uses the sodium vapor lights.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had a series there where I had 8 frames, and every frame had a slightly different color to it because the lights were shifting as they were pulsing.
Wow.
Mhm.
And
A little
again,
bit of
and that
what
was
we
one of
talked
those
about
cases-
last week with the LED lights. That can happen with LED lights big time, and
Yep.
they flicker so fast you don't see it with your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
But your shutter, if you're working with a high speed shutter, it can capture the difference in colors, or Skip runs into the difference in exposure. You may catch in between the flicker, so it's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, I guess on a rare instance that can happen, but boy, doing a custom white balance gets it right in the camera for me.
Yep.
And that's the
So-
way the client gets it.
Ron and I, we do a lot of real estate, and you can have, shooting a real estate listing, you can have 3 different kinds of lights very easily in any given scene. Just, and that's very simple types of real estate listings. You can have daylight coming from a window, you can have your strobe, and then also you can have a tungsten light. And so, in that case, I shoot raw, and I do essentially what the answer to the question is. I shoot raw, get as much information on that image as I can possibly get. And then I may need to do some Lightroom work, or even some Photoshop work to balance that mixture out.
But you'll
There's
never
also-
really get the color of the light that's in that environment.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of your question,
I
Skip.
said you'll never really get the color of the light that's in that environment.
No, you
What are you
won't.
setting the white balance for?
Right.
If you got 3 different colors.
I set mine for my strobe in most cases. But the other thing I forget where I was going with that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Train derailed. Oh, and you also have to look at the scene and see what's appealing. It may be appealing to let your tungsten lights go orange in that home. It provides a feeling of warmth in a residence, and people are that's gonna be appealing to a buyer. You got to talk to your client and see what they want. I mean, looking at Deb's background right now, those warm tungsten lights on her background, some people are going to find that very appealing in a home. They don't want to see it really blue and overcast.
I guess it just means everybody has their own kind of way to attack it on the
To a degree,
final end.
and so
Yeah.
getting back to the question,
That's what the test requirement is.
right? getting back to the question, in my mind, provide your image, your saved image with, make sure you've got enough information there that you can make the end image what you want it to be or what your client wants it to be. Shoot it in
Yep.
RAW, and then it can be changed.
That's
The
one
other
of
thing
the
is, the
questions.
more that you manipulate an image outside of a raw file, the more degraded it will be. So use a raw processing program like, Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw to do as much as you can before you open it up in Photoshop in a compressed format or a different format.
I guess that's one of those questions I've talked about before. You need to look at the other answers and throw them out.
Correct.
Yeah,
And,
that,
you end up with the most correct,
yeah.
Right.
Because I do remember one situation I was in where it drove me nuts. It was inside of a church. It was actually a Martin Luther King celebration that they had at this church. And it actually depended on where I was standing taking the pictures. The lighting changed because you had, the windows on one side, way up. At other places you had way up in the ceiling lights. Others you had them down lower. And if I was taking pictures of the speaker, the person speaking, the lighting was different than if I was taking pictures of the orchestra that was playing, or if I went up in the balcony and took pictures of the crowd. The lighting was different in every one of them spots.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a thing of, I got it as close as I could in the camera and then made the final adjustments in RAW.
Right.
But the thing is, I did my best to get it right in camera first so that
Correct.
I minimized what I had to correct later, because I don't like correcting things.
I don't like Photoshop either.
I'm trained to be very lazy.
Trained to be lazy.
Well, could you tell that to all the 10,000 photographers with a 10-mile radius of me? All those lovely Instagram filters they like to use on their pictures to make them look romantic. And
No, I won't tell them that, because I tell you right now, if you don't tell them that, in 5 years there won't be competition anymore.
yeah.
That's true.
Well, another professional photographer friend of mine said a long time ago, he says, you don't use Photoshop to fix a problem, you use Photoshop to finish the problem or finish the
Yes.
photo.
Right.
It's not for fixing things. Fixes in the camera.
Yep.
It's for enhancing.
Yeah, finish is what he said.
Good.
That's my goal, is to get it as much possibly correct in the camera. And you can do
Yes,
that
me
in
too.
RAW too. You can use your tools to do that. And I mean, I use in my Lightroom and stuff if I have to have a minor adjustment or a crop or something. That's kind of where I keep that.
I had a question.
Go for it.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, Deb.
Hi. Lighting is it's killing me on exam. But I'm just soaking in everything that you all were saying. So I did the practice test the other Friday, and there was a question on there, and I want you guys to help me understand it. It said setting the white balance preset in your camera for flash will, and then it's giving me the answers, and I'll tell you all what I chose, but I'll tell you what the correct answer is. But it says A, produce correct color in a room with tungsten ambient light. B, produce correct color in a room with fluorescent ambient light. C, correct your color to match the background color when photographing a subject close to the time of sunset. And D, correct your color to match the background color when photographing a subject close to noon on a clear day. Now, I said B, produce correct color in a room with fluorescent ambient light, because I was looking at flash and I was equating it to fluorescent, and that's why I chose B, but that was wrong.
Flash is balanced for daylight.
Okay.
So your answer would have been the noontime one, because that's daylight.
Ew. So the key would have been knowing what flash. Well, I was looking at flash, but I don't know. I was just thinking fluorescent.
Yeah, flash and daylight are basically the same thing. I mean, mathematically there might be a little difference, but basically they're the same thing. And fluorescent has a greenish tint to it, and incandescent has a kind of an amber color to it. But daylight is higher in blue.
For the current test questions, fluorescent will have a green cast to it.
Okay.
Caveat.
Yeah, don't take that as fact for
because there are daylight balanced
practicality,
as well.
because fluorescent actually has probably about 7 different casts. You can look up at a fluorescent light and you can tell what cast it's giving off.
Yep.
And some of your cameras, when you set to fluorescent, will give you those options. Fluorescent warm, fluorescent daylight. So, I mean, look into that as well.
The simplest thing to do.
I like the way. Was that Sally that said when at these questions, or was that Christy? When looking at these questions, I need to be looking at my camera at the same time. That's probably what my issue is, because I don't have my camera in my hand.
We're tactile learners.
Yeah. What you say, Tom?
That we all learn by doing. So having the camera in your hand helps. It reinforces it.
Okay.
Try and do whatever the question is saying. Try and do it yourself with your camera.
Do the scenario.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it says you're taking pictures in this mixed lighting and you've got your strobe, go ahead and take a picture like that with all of the answers. Change it.
Got it.
Use each answer and see which one's going to give you the result that's correct. I mean, it's not like, when you're studying and doing the practice test, there's no time limit.
Right.
You can spend an hour on one question if you want.
Right. I think where I'm messing up is I'm trying to just do it all, just book knowledge, but I'm finding that's not working. So I'm going to have to pull my camera out.
It's not
It's a
memorized.
lot easier. It's a lot easier.
That's
to
what
learn
it
from
is.
your mistakes.
And also, look at what the question asks. Do not try and guess. Were they meaning this or no? Just go with what it asks. Don't think into it.
Okay.
That when I was practicing, that's what was killing me, because I was thinking, okay, they asked this, but were they really meaning this? Or what if it was in this situation? Like, no, just read the question. Don't overthink it.
And that's what I'm doing, Chuck. I'm going too deep.
Yeah.
I'm trying to overthink it.
Yeah, just stay out of the weeds. Just
Okay.
look at the pretty flowers, never mind the weeds.
That's right.
That's a good question.
So yeah, that's what it was. It was correct your color to match the background color when photographing a subject close to noon on a clear day. That was I couldn't understand that, but now when you're equating flash to closer to daylight, now that's making sense.
So Christy just posted in the chat kind of in a way, it's a chart of the different Kelvin temperatures for different types of scenarios in lighting. It's really good. I'm sure that there's a reference material that also posts this, but if you copy and paste this and print it out, that may be something good for you to kind of have in hand when you're out shooting. Um, what's good about it, or what's nice about it, is instead of relying on the preset flash or preset daylight or preset tungsten, is now you can go to the tungsten, or I'm sorry, I didn't say that right. The Kelvin temperature. You can dial in the correct Kelvin temperature for what those scenarios are.
And if you look at what she posted, it shows Kelvin for midday is 5,000 to 5,500. Kelvin for flash is 5,500.
Okay.
So yeah, the daylight, the taking a picture at noon and your flash, you're going to be looking at basically the same lighting unless it's a cloudy day. Then things change.
Yep. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, that was the reason why I went from a crop sensor to a full frame. It's because in my crop sensor, I did not have the ability to change those numbers. It was just da 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 da. It was, like there it was. But with my full frame, I had the ability to go in and set Kelvin. So I was like, yeah, that's what I need, what I want. I got to do it, So I had to move forward on that, and that's what I shot with when I did my images. I had, ultimate control.
Awesome.
And remember, when you get the question wrong, that's just an opportunity to learn something you didn't know.
Spoken like a true educator. You know it, you just don't know you know it yet.
Yep.
So true.
All right,
I used to tell my students all the time, they'd tell me, I can't, and I'd say, no, you know it, you just don't know you know it yet.
Well, I failed the last exam by 7 points.
Ooh.
So lighting is where I'm trying to spend the most of my time, and those equivalent exposures. And I'm going to get with Chris, which is Michigan's liaison, and it's going to help me a little bit more with that. So.
We're going to work on exposure equivalents until you got that like the back of your hand.
Yep. I'm struggling with that too, and I think it's because I don't use it. And I think if I used it, I'd probably understand it better. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yes, you're probably correct in making that statement. I would say I would challenge you to think of it this way. You probably use it more than what you understand it to be right now. If you're shooting more in automatic modes, the camera's taking care of some of that for you.
Oh no, I'm not in automatic.
Right.
So then you know how to do it.
Yeah, then you have to be working with exposure equivalents, and you just probably need to hang on the term more than, because you already understand what you're doing. You just need to understand what's going on with
get
all
the numbers in there.
Yeah, my guess is, like Chris, you're doing it. You're doing it all the time. You just don't realize you're doing it, and you can't verbalize what you're doing.
I think you're probably right about that.
You got to learn how to verbalize what you're doing. Long enough to take the test, because most likely you're already doing it. You're taking a picture of somebody, and then you got it perfectly exposed, and a cloud comes over. You make an adjustment on your camera without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
That's equivalent exposure.
Yep.
And you're not even thinking like, oh, cloud, click, and you got it.
For the most part, I think, and liaisons can correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't see any questions that varied from this statement. But for the most part, exposure equivalents, they're going to go more in the practical sense of, okay, well, you're taking a picture of a person running, for instance, and your meter tells you that you're using a shutter speed of the 60th of a second, f5.6 at 200 or 250 ISO. They're going to want you to tell you what adjustment you need to make to stop the action of that person running.
Yeah. Or they may tell you, all right, you've increased your shutter speed to X to freeze the action.
Yep.
Now, what do you have to do with the other? And it'll give you some choices. Well, you change your aperture to this, or you change your ISO to that, or a combination. And basically, you throw out the ones that aren't going to work. So you're left with the only one that does. I do remember a number of questions like that where they gave you a scenario, which scenario really didn't matter. And then told you, we changed this setting to this. Now, what do you have to do to maintain equivalent exposure?
Yep.
Which is why on my notes, I drew my exposure triangle in my little note sheet before I started.
Well,
So
and the other thing the way to think of it, there's four components that go into equivalent exposure: intensity of light, your shutter speed, your f-stop, and then the sensitivity of your image sensor. I don't remember any questions on the test that varied the intensity of light. Am I incorrect there?
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, if you get into the inverse square and the strobes moving from distances.
Well, yeah, there is a little bit of that. I don't. Yeah, in that case, they didn't vary well, your shutter speed's a constant. They didn't vary your lens opening, or did they? No, they were asking how you needed to change your lights, where you move your light to. So yeah.
Well, the way they asked the question, like say for example, this one, given equivalent exposure to f11 at 1/15.
Okay. And what are the answers that they ask you for, or they provide you with?
Let's see. I just got the correct one on here. I don't have the. Well, my answer was f8 at 1/1/8, and the correct answer was f16 at 1/8.
Yeah.
So we're missing a little bit of information there that we needed to get the answer.
Okay, let's see if
Here's
I find a better.
A sample question from the sample test. It says, when given an equivalent exposure of f11 at 1/125th of a second, which of the following is an equivalent exposure setting? Now, they left ISO out of this, so you don't have to worry about the ISO. But it gives you f16 at 1/60th, f8 at 1/60th, f8 at 1/25th, and f16 at 1/25th. And so, you just have to go on each one. Each of those, which setting adds light and which one takes away the same amount. And the answer to that one happened to be f16 at 1/60th is the same exposure as f11 at 1/25th.
Oh. When you said 1/60th, I thought I heard 1/160th. I'm like, wait a minute, no, it's not.
1/60th of a second. Yeah.
Well, I guess back in the day when I was first learning equivalent exposures, like I don't know, 10 years ago, we weren't taught it as an equivalent exposure. We were just like, if you want your background to blur, open up your aperture more, but then you got to figure out on the other end how many to go up to keep the same exposure. So they basically said, if you clicked it down 2 stops on this side, click it up 2 stops on that side.
Yeah.
And you basically get the same exposure that you would get. And that's how I've always equated to figuring out my equivalent exposures. Is how many did I drop to one side versus to the other side?
The advantage that some of us have had is learning exposure equivalents on old Kodak, or I'm sorry, Pentax K1000s, where you had actual click stops for your shutter speed on the top of the camera and actual click stops for your lens opening, and you had to change your ISO over on the ISO dial. It's harder to do on today's cameras, when you're working with this screen, and sometimes you got to figure out what that screen is telling you. You don't necessarily have a dial there. Does that make sense?
Wait a minute. Ours have click stops, Chris.
Yes, they do. You're right.
Click, click, third
You're right.
stop.
They are. But they're not actual dials at the top of the camera, and you don't have a lens opening on the camera that you were dealing with. Now it's all done by dialing in on a screen and then dialing in. It makes that electronic adjustment on your lens for you, especially with apertures. Yeah, Steve's showing us his old, was that an F3?
It's not old at all. It's a brand new camera. It's an XT4. It has
Oh, right, yeah, and some of the
what you
camera
call
manufacturers have gone back to
retro.
that, which I like. I
Yeah,
don't
you
think,
have total control at the top of the camera with the dials.
right.
Yeah, but I don't look at the screen. If I want to raise it, I go click, click, click on the front for aperture, on the back
Yep.
for shutter speed.
Yep, that's what I do.
You are right. You are right. It's just different today than it was back with a F3 or a K1000 or.
Yeah, this is what I teach all my students with. This is
Yes.
based on the old film cameras.
Yep.
It's got a little slider there so you can visualize what it is you're learning. I carried one of those my first 3 years, and I still didn't really understand it.
Good one.
Dawson Luna Pro. There you go. It'll show them right there.
Yep.
I think
They
sometimes
still sell those?
I make them.
I want one.
So Konica still has their original incident light meter. It does the same thing. Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, we're coming
Mia's
up
saying
on
something, but she's on mute.
who what?
Mia's talking, but she's on mute.
Oh. We can't hear you.
Still can't hear you.
Still can't hear you.
Unmute yourself, Mia.
Unmute yourself, Mia.
There she
I
is.
have one that's similar. A friend of mine gave me a bunch of photography books that she didn't want anymore. And it was tucked inside one of the books. And for the longest time, I just kept looking at it going, what the hell is this? It took me a while to wrap my head around what it was. But that one you got there, I'll pay you for one. Like Sally said, I want one.
Oh, he just
I
put
uploaded
it-
the PDF. I
That's
just print them out
awesome.
on cardstock and cut them out. And whenever I'm teaching, I don't let my students use any kind of auto. They're straight up manual. So everything that we do is based on doing equivalents and using that slider to get their exposures right. Kind of old school. When I was in the Air Force, when I got my airmen in, I always made them use the medium format cameras that didn't have any electronics, and they had to use that till they showed me they could before they got any updated stuff. So I guess I'm kind of mean that way.
And I did have someone tell me, if you really want to understand the test, just go get a film camera and practice that way.
And
Because
slide
that's
them.
going to really put you exactly where you need to be. And then, shoot your images in digital.
You figure out really quick, film's expensive.
Well, it is,
Yeah.
but
You learn to get it right.
And not to
That's
mention
right.
setting up that dark room in your bathroom with the red light and all the chemicals. That's a
You
I miss those days.
well,
and worst case scenario, getting it wrong and having to go in those days, you didn't have the back of the camera to look at. You had to go back and
no.
reshoot.
Yep.
And you don't want to look bad to your client to reshoot.
Where can I find a CPP liaison in Houston?
If you go to PPA's website, it's going to give you the list of all. It says find your liaison. Go to Texas and just find them, and they'll have all their contact information.
I'm looking at that right now. Let me
Is
give you the link.
Francie still on liaison?
there we go.
Francie who?
Ballsworth Stonecrest.
I don't know.
I
Where
don't
are
know.
you
She's
looking?
gone through cancer. I don't know if she is still doing that.
I put
Where
the
are you
link to
looking?
the list in the chat.
Awesome.
Houston. Okay. Well, I could. Thanks.
Here, I'm going to
Your
tell you
local
if I know
affiliate?
anybody.
Well, I'm in San Antonio, so if you can't find somebody else more local, you can get in touch with me.
Heck, right
Well,
now,
they only got 100 in Texas.
There's not many in Florida.
Well,
Land-
Texas is big though. I mean, it'd take me an hour just to drive to see Francie.
Landon is wonderful. I don't know where Mansfield, Texas is, but Landon's wonderful.
Okay.
The Furman, Jennifer Furman and her husband Daniel are wonderful.
Teresa Couch is in Woodlands. How far is Woodlands?
Oh, an
It's on the
hour,
north side of town.
45 minutes. Yeah, I think I'll talk to Teresa. She may be able to help me.
I mean, all the people I'm working with, it's all remote right now anyway. So
Yeah.
Dan Ferguson is wonderful.
Okay,
Do you all know
thanks all.
Michael, do you all know Michael Lutz? I think his name is. He's the closest to me.
Yep.
Michael Foltz. That's it. Michael
Yep.
Foltz.
He's been on this call.
Has he?
I think so.
He was on our last liaison meeting.
Oh, right.
He's about an hour from me.
There you go. Good.
So you guys were talking about that 50 question practice test. It's a new one. Where is it located?
I
on
will
PPA?
see if I can get there. It is in certified.
Julia just
professional.
posted it. Hold on.
Did we post that in the
I'm
I'm
about
gonna look.
Can't see it in the chat.
to post it.
good,
Okay,
awesome.
Thank you.
Sample tests. There they are.
Okay.
Thank you, Chuck.
Well, wait a minute. Let me make sure it goes there. Yeah, that will take you to the resources. And you
Okay.
scroll down, you'll see CPP sample tests. And it's got the online sample test, downloadable sample test, and then downloadable sample test with answers.
Oh, okay, got
And
it.
the one with answers also gives you the reference to where they got it, whether it was London and Upton or one of the other reference books.
Okay, got
And
it.
it gives you the page number.
Awesome.
I would really
Also-
encourage you as you study for the test to not just get in the habit of taking the test questions and memorizing them.
Okay.
I would try to figure out why they're asking the questions and what part of it, if you are missing the question, do you not understand? And researching why you don't understand, that will make you a stronger photographer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, Sally. I agree. And that's where I think I'm making my mistake at, by just trying to just pass it, but I'm not completely understanding everything. And so that is my approach this time, is to make sure I'm understanding. So yes, so that does make complete
Yeah,
sense.
do research until you understand why it's the correct answer and not just what the correct answer is.
To
Right.
Chuck's point, if you take and you think of real life situations where whatever you're talking about was the answer to how to do it right, just remembering that scenario will help you remember the principle and help you better recognize when to use it when you're out there in the real shoot.
Yep.
Okay.
And so I want to tell you something else too, because I got certified over 15 years ago, but I want you to know that I didn't pass the test the first time I took it either. And also the other thing too is I want you to know that for me, I'm not a good test taker. I just don't take tests well.
I'm not either.
And I look at the questions and it's like my ADD goes all over the board and I start thinking about all kinds of things. I'm just not a good test taker. And for me, I learned by repetition. And so one of the things that I want to tell you is that just like being in this group, for me, the reason that I stayed on as a liaison and why that I come to meetings every week is that I keep on repetitively listening and hearing it over and over and over. And I would encourage you to even stay in the group after you do it, because that repetition is going to help you. Like, it just, like, here I am 15 years later, every time that I come in, I learn something new and I hear something different. So it's not something that you're just going to go, today I passed the test, now I became a photographer. You just make the commitment to be a lifelong learner.
Yeah,
Yep.
I agree. I like
Yeah.
that. When I first started photography, my whole thing was, after retirement, I just stepped out to do something that I love to do. Now, because I said that, it wasn't that I just want to go and just take pictures. I want to know the why.
Right.
And that is why when I first started doing it, that's when I signed up for PPA. And then I went searching for the technical part of photography. I want to know the ins and outs, the whys and how to's. So I'm not I'm not the best photographer, but I know if I learn how to be a photographer and knowing those technical things and knowing why you do what you do, I know that's going to enhance me as a photographer. So that was my whole thing. And that's why I love this group, because it's like, wow. And just listening, I may not always understand everything that you're saying, but you're, like you saying, Sally, if you just keep listening, and then now I'm going to practice more with my camera. And I know that that's going to help me better as well.
Sure, there's a lot of competition. So
It just leads to understanding who you are as a photographer and your why and why you're doing it. Sally says you carry, and you carry it with you everywhere you go. Now that I am on the other side of passing and becoming certified, Sherman is with me everywhere I go. You people are with me everywhere I go. I think about what people say. And when I'm approaching something, it's like, okay, what would Sherman do? What would Sherman do? Because he's there.
Mia, and that's scary. If we're with you all the time, Mia, if we're with you all the time, that's a little bit of a scary scenario. I'm not sure I'm not sure you'd want me with you all the time.
Your advice.
Look here, Sherman's everywhere.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, I see, Chuck.
But you carry that, and you grow and you bloom on your own, and it may not be. Your bloom's not going to be the same as Sally's bloom or Chuck's bloom or Chris's bloom or my bloom or anyone else's bloom. Your bloom's your own. And you're gonna, and you will get there. It's just part of the journey of you.
Yeah.
May I ask you something, Deb? When you took the test before, did you take the time at the very beginning to write your, I'm going to call it cheat sheets, but you all know what I mean, to write your apertures, to write your ISOs, to write all your little diagrams?
I did, Christy. I do have, like you say, I called it, the guy that was training us, he called it our brain dump. So he said, write all your brain dump stuff down. So I started out doing all of my writing those every day as far as but when I didn't know anything about photography. So my approach was, and I'm like Sally, I don't like to take tests, I like freeze up. So my approach when I first took it, and you guys don't laugh at me, but this is going to be my 4th time.
It doesn't matter. That's like, that makes me more proud of you.
Deb, I think that one thing I can just curtail my conversation with is, since you've done that already, this time as you're going through the practice tests, look, before you answer the question, look at your cheat sheets, quote unquote, and see where that answer is. See if that information can lead you to your answer. Therefore, when you take the test, if you've taken the time to write those things down, you'll lead yourself to the answer.
Okay.
Just use simple logic, you'll do it.
Okay.
And plus, if it's not on your little brain dump cheat sheet, then you know you need to add it to it.
Right.
When I took the practice test, I started with a blank sheet of paper on every practice test, and I did my brain dump for every practice test. I didn't keep using the same one over and over again. I rewrote it every time. And the more I took it, the more things I added to it.
Okay.
Because I realized, ooh, I should have wrote that down.
Yeah. And my other approach too was I went through Steve Kozak's, all his videos, all the book. I like read it like a textbook.
Mhm.
And I'm reading it and I'm like, I don't understand this, but I read it and I still failed the test. So I like these ideas that you all are giving me, and I'm definitely.
It's kind of like what Sally was saying. When you read something, then go ahead, grab your camera and do it.
Do it. Mhm.
Now that I didn't do.
That'll really help you. You'll get that
Yeah.
muscle memory going, and I think you'll do well if you do that.
Okay. Thank you, guys. You all so sweet.
It also helps if you can find yourself a Sally that is going to constantly
Sally.
question you every time you remember.
Exactly. I had Sam. He flipped everything on me, so it was like, okay, it's all on me.
Well, I got Chris. I'm gonna pick Chris Brain.
We'll knock it out of the park there, Deb.
Every time I would shoot with Sally, she would like, all right, why are you doing this? Why are we doing it this way? How come we don't do it that way?
Yeah.
And I finally passed my test and she quit bothering me.
Now I ask him.
She
Yeah, no, she didn't quit bothering me. I still get the questions all the time.
So Chris, this is what I'm gonna do, Chris. I'm going to go and for this week implement all of these great ideas, and then me and you can get together next week. Would that work?
That is an announcement that we were going to make because of imaging.
Oh, that's right. I'll be at imaging too.
We're gonna take a break next week.
Okay.
So everybody, get your learn on next week. There's some exciting speakers coming up. Make sure you pay attention to those. We can probably come up with some questions based on the content and imaging, but we will take a break next week. And so we'll be back. But in the meantime, you know how to get a hold of me on, we Facebook message me.
Yeah.
We can do short convos, or we can do a deep dive. We were talking about doing a deep dive on, exposure pairs. I'd recommend that you print out what I already did. Print out what Jack gave us.
I got that. Okay.
Print that out, and then we can deep dive into that on if you're still having struggles with exposure pairs.
Okay. So where are you going to? Are you going to any particular classes in imaging? I'm going. I haven't
looked at the schedule even. I think because here's the secret to imaging this year. It's so cool. You've got 30 days for the regular programs. You got 30 days to watch all of it. So my plan is to watch all of it.
Okay.
The only thing I don't think that you can do that with is with the pre-con classes.
With the pre-con classes.
I signed up to see Joe Edelman and a couple of business classes. So that's the other thing that we don't talk a lot about in the CPP type stuff, is we don't talk a lot about business, and that's where I get a lot of my information is at imaging on business and what I need to do to change and what's the current trends in marketing and that type of thing. So
I saw on the PP website that if you can't make one of the pre-convention classes, you can actually pay for it and watch it after the convention is over.
Right. And there's some that you're not allowed to do that. I think Joe Edelman is one of the ones that you're not allowed to do that. But I think they'll tell you right up front that you'll be able to watch it at your leisure.
Yeah, I briefly looked at the link they sent out last night to get download your handbook for this year's,
I never saw that.
So it was pretty cool.
One of my candidates last night texted me, and I haven't had a chance to verify it yet. Both Chris Duncan and Steve Kozak's pre-cons are sold out. He told me that if you pay for it, you can watch it afterwards. He's planning on doing that.
Yeah, I saw that, Skip, but I didn't see where it was available to purchase that though. So maybe it may be available once imaging starts. But I did see it was sold out.
Yeah, and he told me that if you signed up for it, you could watch it afterwards. So I got to verify that. That'd be a good thing.
Yep. All
So
right.
can I say one last thing, which is completely off topic?
Not allowed to do anything off topic, Sally. That's against the rules.
But
Okay.
since we like Sally, she can.
Okay. So because it's the end of the year and I was just working on my sales tax, I created an Excel spreadsheet that, like, once you put in the dollar amount, it tells you what the 8% is and how much it is, and then it goes back to the original total. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And if anybody wants a copy of this spreadsheet, which is all set up blank, I can email it to you, because it's really wonderful to track your sales. And it's an Excel spreadsheet that you can do your taxes on for the whole year. Does that make sense? It's all set up. So if anybody would like that, I put my email in here and I will email you a copy of this spreadsheet, which is really wonderful. It took a while to figure out how to do it. I've been using it for almost 10 years.
So if I do that for the 8%, does that mean I get to keep the extra 1.5%?
Yeah. Oh, is yours higher up there in Michigan?
No, it's the other way around. Yours is higher than mine.
Oh God, well, you would have to change the amount. I'm not sure if I would know how to do that, but you could get my spreadsheet and try.
Darn, I wanted the extra 1.5%.
Oh, man.
Well, now see, in Georgia, if you pay your sales tax within a certain amount of time, they actually let you keep part of it.
Yes.
Ah, nice.
In Texas, I think it's like 5% or something if you pay online in advance,
And Oregon
or a
has
0.5%,
0.
something like that.
It's 0? There's no sales tax?
No sales tax. They
Oh
don't-
my
but-
God,
but
you're
these
so
get-
Well,
They do
here's-
They make it up somewhere else.
areas on their, property taxes and stuff, but not, for purchasing goods and stuff, so.
here's
I
the
don't have
good
to
thing about
calculate it.
Michigan. The good thing about Michigan is if you're delivering digital images, which commercial photographers, that's all we deliver, there's no sales tax.
Oh, that's sweet.
It's the
That's
same
the same
way
in
in
Florida.
Georgia, as
Yeah, I think it's
long
the same in Virginia too.
unless you put it on a flash drive or a DVD.
Right.
It's the same thing in Georgia. If you give them anything tangible that they can
Right,
actually
tangible
hold in their
objects.
hand,
Right.
Yep.
you have to pay sales tax.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe
Not
it's the same in
just-
Virginia.
The tangible object, but the entire session.
Correct.
A lot of people tried to get away with it by charging a huge session fee and very little for the product, figuring they only had to pay sales tax on the product. Yeah, it doesn't work that way in Georgia.
Nope.
If
Yeah,
you
it's the same
sell
in
them
Florida.
anything tangible, you have to pay sales tax on every bit of it.
Correct.
Something I learned about Florida is if I'm doing a shoot and I need to rent a lens for the shoot or something, I have to charge a sales tax on the session because I actually rented a lens. So in essence, the person is actually paying for the rental. So I have to charge the sales tax on the actual whole
Wow.
session but not on a digital. If I set it digitally, I don't have to set it. But if I actually rent a lens or a piece of equipment for something, then there's a sales tax on the
I
session.
include sales tax on everything.
Yeah, it's easy.
So what you're saying, JR, I'll make sure I'm clarifying this, is if you turn the rental fee over to your client, if that's a line item on your invoice,
Mhm.
then you have to charge them sales tax for the rental.
Entire session.
Mhm.
For the
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense.
Wow.
So
Crazy
yeah,
crazy
the
laws.
rules are weird. It's just bizarre.
Yeah.
Well,
That's the-
does that,
When I travel, it's really weird to go to sales tax. What is that?
yeah, but JR, if you pay sales tax on the rental,
Uh-huh.
you mean the client has to pay sales tax
On the
rental?
whole session. So if it costs me $50 or $100 for the weekend for a lens, and I'm charging them what 500, then they have to pay the sales tax on the 500.
Yeah, but you're paying the sales tax on the rental too.
Well, it depends on what state I get the rental from, I guess.
Oh,
So,
sure.
But it would depend on whether that rental is a line item on your invoice to your client, right?
So technically, I'm supposed to charge it whether it's a line item or not, but but
Well, that's craziness.
yeah, it's a weird little. I didn't even know that until about 7 months ago, and I was like, really?
It just sounds like the state's getting sales tax twice on the same lens. No?
So, but it wouldn't be tax, and the sales tax would be in the state I rented the lens from, so it wouldn't be Florida's sales tax.
Well, what if you rented it in Florida?
No, I don't do that because I went to rent a lens once, and they wanted a deposit, but they wanted the deposit to be equal to the amount of the lens, how much the lens would cost. And I was like, well, if I had that, I'd just go out and buy the lens.
Same thing. That's what
Yeah.
ProCam does here too.
Yeah.
I think it's a
Replacement
little-
fee, yeah.
I'll give you my car as a deposit.
I was like, I'll just go
About
buy
that
the
much.
lens. Why would I rent it if I had that much money?
That's
Sorry.
right. All right, gang. Well, we're in overtime here. I'm gonna kick out of here. Everybody have a great imaging. Enjoy your time at imaging. And if anybody has any questions between now and 2 weeks from now that you want to post it to us individually. Get a hold of us individually. We'll be glad to help you out. Everybody take care.
And
And we
thanks
have
for
a
all
Okay,
your
bye,
help.
everybody.
All right.
Bye.